love music. I've been doing this thing since I was 4 years old. Hi, I'm Miss Crystal, also known as the Redhead Attorney. I went to law school because I wanted to learn how to protect myself in my music career. I started my law firm because as a record label owner and attorney today, I know what it takes to be successful in this business. You have to be willing to take control of your career, and you have to be willing to do everything yourself, at least in the beginning. The two main rules I teach in my book for independent artists, as well as my record label online course, are number one, you always have to be your own biggest cheerleader, and be willing to take a chance on yourself. And number two, you have to learn to stay legally protected every step of the way during your career. When you take control of your career, you take control of your future. Welcome back to another episode of the Miss Crystal podcast. I have another live consultation today, and this is someone who is the owner of an independent record label as well as an independent artist, and he has some great questions, things about LLC formations, making a real business, trademarking your stuff. So we're going to cover all of that. But before I get into it and bring in our guest today, I figured I should do a little housekeeping. And some of you who have been following on social media, if you want to follow the law stuff, it's Redhead Attorney on all social media platforms. But this week, we've been promoting an upcoming course that we're releasing tomorrow. And the course is a free online video course where I'm going to be teaching you everything you need to know about understanding contracts, right? I understand that so many of our clients, but also just musicians in general, business owners in general, have to deal with contracts, and you don't always have an attorney to help you to understand it, to negotiate it. And because that's the case, and that's how it was for me before becoming an attorney, I decided, you know what, instead of making you go to law school and incur a whole bunch of student loan debt, I'm just going to teach you what you need to know. And like I said, it is a free video course. So be sure to follow on Redhead Attorney. We'll have announcements tomorrow all about it, and be sure to go through that. All right, guys. So with that being said, I'm going to bring in Eric, who is our guest and live consult today.
Hi, thank you for having me, Miss Crystal. I really appreciate it. It's a pleasure.
Thank you for being here. All right. So before we kind of jump into the nitty gritty, I figured let everyone know a little bit about your record label. And then also, where are you based? Are you here in Arizona?
Yep, Arizona, Phoenix.
Okay, got it. So when did you start your label?
Yeah, so I've actually started a couple labels with different names over the years, but I finally settled on this name a couple of years ago, and I started the LLC last year, beginning of last year. It's called Street Mogul Records. Hip hop based, R&B based label. And yeah, I've just been.
You're an artist yourself, right?
Yes, I go by the name Debates, DBAIT. And I sing, I rap, and I make beats. So my music encompasses mostly hip hop, but the genres is like hip hop, like it'll be like East Coast boom bap to trap, and then to drill, and then R&B. Just experiment with like pop and R&B, a little bit of dark R&B, and a little bit of dark pop R&B.
Dark pop, hey, I like that.
Yeah,
that's my thing all day long.
Right.
Let's talk.
Yeah.
Okay, so when you started the label, was it to basically build something around yourself and your own project, or did you start the label because you wanted to sign artists to your company?
A little bit of both, but basically to be an independent artist was the main goal. And that's the message of the, I do want to get to the point where I sign artists. Right now, I just collaborate with artists under that label. But, I do, once I leverage myself and get to the point where I want to get to and get the experience business wise, because music, I've been making music, writing songs since I was 8, playing piano since I was a kid, and drums, and was in jazz band in college and stuff. So the music aspect I'm finally, comfortable with, but the business aspect I want to get better at. So once I get better at all that stuff, marketing, promotion, contracts and stuff, then I definitely want to sign artists. But the name Street Mogul Records is basically, I come from a background of 10 years plus as a medical interpreter in hospitals,
Okay.
so
Wow.
and that's great. People that do that, it takes a lot of commitment. The career being a doctor is just years and years of just crazy grueling grind. But
So, you have a work ethic, all right? That's the thing when it comes to starting not only your own business, because it's the same grind, hustle, you got to figure out so much, but for someone trying to have a successful record label in the music business, that's a whole other layer of difficulty, which I'm sure you've already kind of found out.
I appreciate that. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, definitely. And there's a lot of careers that require school, but as far as like music, it's more of like a street smart type of thing.
Yeah.
So that was kind of like the, definitely the work ethic, of course, and the mogul, there's the mogul aspect, but the street smart aspect of there's no textbook for the music business, for creative type of careers. There's no college for it. There's degrees, but that doesn't guarantee. It's not like, whereas like you do like a residency as a doctor, it's not a guarantee either, but it's a lot more of a guarantee than, starting your own label, being an artist and stuff like that. Of course, you got to put the work in, but it's just a different.
There's so many steps that go into it. Now we're going to talk a little bit about the actual LLC, but that's usually the first thing that you do, right? So, you said as far as there's no real school for this, there is nonetheless a process that a record label owner needs to go through, right? So for example, if you called my office and you said, Crystal, I'm starting from scratch and I need help. What are the steps that I need to take? And we do this with our clients, right? So step number 1, we're going to register an LLC or, maybe a different type of entity. But the point being, we register a real company in the state that you live. So in this case, Arizona. And we do that because the company act as a liability shield, right? So then when you're doing business and you're signing artists, or let's say you're just doing like featured artist agreements for this and that, if something happens and you end up getting sued, as long as you use that actual LLC in the contract, right? So you signed with the LLC, then you are protected personally. So meaning that person can only come after the LLC and any funds, any stuff that's owned by the company. They can't come after your car. They can't come after your house because that stuff is owned usually personally. So that's the benefit and why we do the LLC formation. Now, I'll do a little plug real quick because I started my own record label, and having gone through this process, I quickly realized it's very difficult. Not just from the whole understanding the logistical stuff, right? From music distribution, getting the music into TV and film, getting tours scheduled. It's a lot, but there's also the legal side. So, because not all, musicians and record label owners can call my office and just, pay to have this work done, we actually put together a course. So for anyone watching, I'll link it when we're done with this in the description, but I have a course teaching you how to start a record label and the entire spiel of it. So going back to with your LLC, I know you have a question about making an amendment. So what are you trying to change with your LLC and what's going on?
Yeah, I actually, as far as the type of business address we can use,
Okay.
I don't know if there's a possibility. I know there's addresses that you can, like business addresses, you can register with the post office and stuff like that. Or does it have to be like an actual physical address? I wasn't too sure about that because I wanted to update the address.
Yeah, that's a good question. So guys, when you file for your LLC, there's 2 things you have to give in any state. The first one is what's the business address of the business? And then the second question is what is the statutory agent address, which is basically who's the person who has to receive legal notices about your company. Now, oftentimes it's the same person, it's the same address. But in times where, let's say, a client is just starting and they're like a bedroom producer, they're starting the record label, they maybe don't have an actual business address. And so this question comes up. So the answer is, sometimes you can get a virtual address right? And so, basically it's someone or a company that will act as your business address as well as your statutory agent address. But sometimes it's like mom. Some people will use like mom's address or some place that they can have mail sent to. But then one workaround is you're not really supposed to use post office addresses depending on what state you're in. And for example, in Arizona, they've kind of gone back and forth on this, right? Sometimes they're okay with PO boxes and they'll change the rule and then they're not. But one kind of workaround that I heard from another attorney, which I thought was pretty smart, was every post office has a physical address. So if, for example, you can't use the actual PO box, right? So PO box and then put the, zip code and things like that. He had suggested use the actual physical address. So if it was 1379, East Drinkwater, and then you put the box number, which is number, let's say 86. So it's a little workaround if you have to use a PO box, so to use it as an actual address. But to answer your question, there's many ways that you can do this. And for example, some clients who go through our law office will ask our law office to act as the business address for their company. So, it could be one of any of those as long as you can actually get mail at that place when they need to communicate with you.
Cool, I appreciate that. That's as far as the LLC, that was pretty much it. I just wanted to get help personally from you to update all that stuff to make sure I did it right and that I didn't get dissolved because I did it the wrong way, so.
Gotcha. Well, and let me ask you a quick question. So with the LLC, have you actually set up a bank account for your LLC yet? So meaning, a business bank account in the name of your company or your LLC?
Not yet. I'm in the process of that.
Okay. So one thing you'll have to do is you have to get an EIN, which is an employer identification number. And the way you can find it, super, super easy. You just Google EIN IRS and it'll bring up usually the exact link. Now, the good news is that you're the sole owner of your LLC, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So the good news is that for anybody, it's super simple, but even easier if you were the only owner of the company. But to get the EIN, it's less than like 10 minutes. And you just go through, you provide, what's the name of the business, what's the address. They'll usually ask for your social security number. And then when you get to the end, they'll generate an EIN, which basically acts like a social security number for the company, right? So we have social security numbers for us as individuals. We have to get one for the company in order to go open a bank account. So before you go to the bank, make sure you actually get that EIN. Very easy. There isn't a fee. And then you can go to the bank and open your account.
Appreciate that. I do have it on my LLC paperwork. I just don't have it by memory, but I'll have to look it up.
Perfect. Yeah. And, some clients who, let's say, have business partners who are in different states or in different countries, every once in a while they'll run into some funky stuff with the bank because they'll want everybody to be there in person. But like I said, it's a lot easier when it's just your sole proprietorship. And so you can just go to the bank and get it open. So that's your homework. Next step to actually open the account. And then the super pro tip for you, and this is how you're going to stay liability proof, which means if and when you get sued, something that comes up is that we'll question, have you actually been using your company like a real company? Okay, so what I mean is if you set up an LLC, which anybody can do, and do it very quickly, it's very inexpensive, it's very fast, you don't want to not use it, not set up a bank account, and not treat it like a real company. Because then it goes back to what I was just saying, right? The LLC, the whole point is we want to protect you from liability. But if you're not actually using the company, and you're not having a bank account, you're not putting money into the business bank account, it allows someone to make the argument that it's just a shell LLC. It's a shell company. And so therefore, that's how sometimes we are able to sue people personally, even if they have an LLC. So make sure you get your bank account set up as soon as possible, and then make sure you use it properly, right? Anytime you have money come and go from your company, it has to go through that bank account. It's not your personal piggy bank. Don't use it for personal things. And that's how you're going to be like super liability proof if and when a situation comes up.
Appreciate it. That was some dope advice. Thank you.
Yeah, you got it. All right, so let's move a little bit into questions about trademarks. What do you got for me?
Yeah. As far as trademarks, I just it was more about like the process of how your law firm helps with the trademarks.
Sure.
I don't want to go through the people that I did my LLC with. I'd rather go with you. So just wondering how that process worked with you. I'm aware of the general process, when I did the trademark search to make sure that everything was cool for all the different names that I need to trademark, but just how your process works.
Yeah, fair enough. So you just hit it. The first thing I usually say to clients looking to register their trademarks is the first thing is, where do you want to register it? Are we doing it at the state level or are we doing it federally, right? So that'd be my question to you. Are we registering here in Arizona, or do you want to register federal, meaning you'd have protection in all the states?
I prefer federal, and I also am aware I got to do trademark on outside of in other countries and get to that point. So, but yeah, federal is the preference.
Yeah, you got it. And that's usually my recommendation as well, because when you have a federal trademark, that means you're protected in every state. And there's reasons why some people only get a registration in one state. Like, for example, in Arizona, marijuana is legal. So we can actually register trademarks for names of businesses selling marijuana. But at the federal level, it's non-registrable, right? Because it's still an illicit drug. So anyway, to go back, when we're doing a federal registration, first step is we got to figure out, the name, right? And so you just said, I already did a search of the USPTO to see if the name is available. And you said you didn't have any names come up that were conflicting?
Right.
Perfect.
Right.
And so what I tell clients is I go, I'll do this for you all day. And it's called a knockout search. I'm searching the USPTO, I'm doing the World Wide Web searches, and then I generate a report. But if the client's already kind of done this and they just want to move forward and skip that step, that's okay. But I tell them, I go, make sure you're searching things like social media. Have you done a search for names like yours on social media?
Yes. There's multiple names that I'm trying to trademark, and so far everything's clear.
Perfect.
So, yeah.
Perfect. Yeah, I mean, guys, if you find names that are super close, you just got to note them. It doesn't mean it's a hard bar. You can't register your trademark because sometimes people are in different countries. And like Eric just said, you have to get trademarks in different countries to have protection in those countries. So different conversation. But the process from there is we typically will take on a client and the client will pay a flat fee. In Arizona, they're roughly about the same amounts, but the flat fee is definitely going to be more than at the state level, right? If we do a state filing, it's very simple. The turnaround is quick, very simple filing fee. But at the federal level, the filing fee for one category of goods, because that's kind of how the USPTO thinks of it, a category of good would be like, you're selling music. What else do you do as a label?
Yeah, so sell music, sell merch, the clothing.
Yep, that's another category, clothing and merch.
The production. And there is, I did find there was like some people with the same name as far as what I want to do with certain aspects of the business that I need a trademark, but it's a different trade. So, I'm in the clear when it comes to that. So, yeah.
Yeah, for record label owners, typically there's three. Typically, we are registering for goods of music, right? So musical goods. We register for clothing, which is the merch, and we register for entertainment services if the label, let's say, is putting on shows and doing tours and things like that. But at a minimum, the most important is, of course, music. So let's say we're doing that. One class is $330 through the USPTO, and that's separate from any attorney time. So what I tell clients is I go, sometimes if you're kind of strapped for cash, the best way to do it is start by just doing one. Do the most important, and then as money comes in, you can do the second and third. And sometimes we just go ham and file for everything at once, and that's okay as well.
Cool. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah, so once you file, the other thing you have to keep in mind is that the federal process is definitely a lot slower. Our typical turnaround on an application is around 9 months, if not longer. And the reason is because once we file, for example, I had 2 trademarks I filed today. And so I was just telling the clients, we're not going to hear back for probably about 3 months. It takes that long for the application just to get assigned to someone to take a look and to see if, is everything good? Are there problems? And even if everything goes absolutely well, we're still looking at about 9 months from the publication process to getting a certificate. And every once in a while, problems come up. And that's why having an actual attorney to help you through it makes the world of difference, because I also have clients who will just kind of go through and they'll end up filing themselves and they'll run into problems, and that's when I get the call because there was issues with the application on how it was filed, or there's a conflict that comes up because there's things that sometimes don't come up in a search, and that might be a foreign variation of the name. So if someone has registered a trademark, let's say in Spanish, and it's a similar name to yours, that actually could be a reason for rejection. And so then we have to get in and we have to kind of, submit our legal arguments and this and that. But that's why you want to have an attorney. So if issues come through, we can help you out.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Yeah. And then once you have your trademark, here's the thing. I tell clients from the moment you actually start using your name, right? So you're using your record label name. You said you had a couple different trademarks. Whatever the mark is, you start getting rights as soon as you start using it. So don't kind of hold it too close to your chest, right? So you're like, oh, I don't want to publish it on social media. I don't want to start my account. I don't want to start my website till I have the registration. I tell clients the complete opposite. And I say you actually want to make sure that you use it as soon as possible, because a lot of times when we have a conflict come up, the person who wins is going to be the person who used it first. So the sooner you use it, the better. But, obviously, once we get a formal registration, now you have a piece of paper, you have a formal certificate to kind of back up the fact that you are, in fact, the sole owner of that trademark.
Dope.
Yeah, so I would just say kind of, for where you're at with your record label, the one other thing that I wanted to kind of address besides with the LLC, the reason why it's super important, getting your trademarks, and then the last piece actually that I wanted to mention was getting things taken down on social media. So let's say we're doing a search and we find that some other person started an Instagram page using your label's trademark to name. What do we do?
If you find that someone else is using it?
You got it.
If you don't got the trademark, then this is very debatable. You might actually lose the case. You got to use, from what I know, is you got to actually use the name, like business-wise, from what I read, you actually have to be doing business as whatever name first, at least, so you have some kind of proof. As far as what the result is, I don't know, because I've never been in a situation where I had to, claim or dispute somebody else for using my names or nothing like that, because my name's pretty unique. But I mean, that's my knowledge. If you could, school me a little on what the right answer is. But I mean, I know you at least got to be doing business as that name first to have some kind of proof.
You got it. And that's the whole common law thing, right? So you start getting rights as soon as you're using it because it's your business name. And so you can still be like, hey, you're stealing my name. You probably saw it. I want you to stop. But as soon as you have that piece of paper, right, so your trademark certificate, guess what? You call me and you say, Crystal, there's a new Instagram page that just started or channel. What do? I go, hey, guess what? I'm going to file a form. I'm going to have it down for you within an hour. And I'm going to have it deleted. And that's the power that having the actual registration has, because a lot of these social media platforms are automated. And so we just have to file the applicable forms, provide the needed information. We can get that taken care of like that.
No doubt.
Yeah. So where I was moving for the last kind of piece of this was, as it relates to the deals you do, you were telling me that you do a lot of like collaborations with other artists. So what does that look like? Is it like artists featuring you or vice versa?
A little bit of both. Collaboration albums, collaboration songs, all under my imprint. There's an album I released with my LLC and someone else's LLC because it was a collaboration album. But yeah, just a little bit of both. Collaboration songs, collaboration albums.
Okay, got it. And then when you guys do these collabs, do you have contracts that you sign?
We actually don't. I know we should. But for the moment, we don't. But that's actually another thing I needed some advice to make sure that I get the contracts right and everything like that.
Yeah. Well, look, again, that not just with the course that I mentioned at the beginning, but in that course, the contract issue comes up. And your answer is pretty common. Most people don't think about the contracts, or if they do, they're just like, oh, I don't even know what these things say. So in the course, I actually have these contracts, like, for example, the artist agreement with artists that you sign, but collaboration agreements. So when you do these collabs, especially when it's with a different label, you have to be super clear about ownership. That is the number one issue that comes up because, most of the time we're trying to make sure that we own it, right? So give me an example of one that you did. Do you own it? Did the other label own it?
Contracts that I have done?
For specifically the music, let me clarify. So when you did one collaboration, was the understanding that you co-own it?
Well, as far as contracts that I've done, I've only done production contracts where I've hired producers. I do my own production, but for this collaboration album, we got some producers for it. So it's mainly just, you got the rights to use this beat type of stuff and their terms and terms of credit and stuff like that. So, but as far as ownership, it's just been like a kind of work like a verbal type of agreement with the artist. But yeah, the contracts as far as that goes is just like production contracts and stuff like that.
Got it. Yeah, so the reason I asked that is because when it comes to the ownership piece, of course you want to have contracts because it talks about money, talks about splits. It just memorializes everything that you guys said verbally. But the other big piece is under copyright law, if you don't have something in writing saying who owns it, even if you verbally said, hey, Eric's going to own it, they could still come back and be like, no, we're co-owners because we help participate, this and that. And this is where problems come up because guess what? One of these times a song's going to go viral on TikTok. One of these times something really great's going to happen, and now you're going to go back to the drawing board and be like, oh shit, who owns it? Who has profit participation? Then, some shady stuff sometimes will happen. So the reason why moving forward, you're going to make sure you have a contract when it comes to clarifying ownership is because under copyright law, if you don't have it in writing, it's not going to be enforceable as a verbal agreement. Okay. And then of course, everything else, you just want to make sure you're crystal clear, about who's getting paid, who gets to collect and all of that.
Crystal clear, no pun intended. Yeah, but I mean, as far as like setting in stone the splits wise, it's just like that. It's registered in ASCAP. It's registered in the distributor that we use for the digital streaming platform. So it is a little like set in stone, but I know it's better to have the contract. So, I'm definitely going to be hiring you for that to get the official paperwork and stuff.
Yeah, no, I mean, I'm telling you, I call it experiential wisdom. So especially in the music business, there are producers who are like Grammy Award winning producers, some of these guys who've worked with the biggest artists, and these guys still don't do contracts just because they don't do them until they've gotten royally screwed. And that doesn't usually happen until something really blows up. So it's usually down the line, and that's why people don't stress too much about this, right? But I'm the one who gets the calls when everything is going sideways. So I hear about this stuff happening so often. And, again, it's just there's usually a problem when the music is making money and someone reneges on the deal. And so instead of, the verbal agreement was this and that, they're like, well, even though it was registered on ASCAP and BMI is 50-50, we were supposed to get 80. And guess what? Now we're in court and you're paying $50,000 to litigate that. So in any case, on a move forward basis, we'll talk about how we can get you set up and so you're staying protected.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, and that's why I wanted to kind of be proactive. I just barely released both those albums, like one a month ago, 2 months ago. So I wanted to, get up on it quick and get a professional. So appreciate your support.
Very good. Yeah, you got it. So guys, I think that Eric has had some really good questions today, just logistically how this stuff works, because when we first kind of start our companies, our record labels, you got to lay the foundation because, I mean, with Eric, there's probably so much practical stuff that you have to deal with, even with just these collaborations. But as soon as you sign an artist or you sign a couple of artists, you're dealing with logistical nightmare and communications and staying on top of people and their teams. And so, obviously, if you just kind of lay that groundwork to make sure your trademarks are getting protected, that obviously you have your LLC and your bank account and your contracts, then you can just kind of sleep a little easier at night, knowing that, something bad's not coming for you down the road.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Well, Eric, you got any other questions for me?
I do, sample clearance wise, but it's cool. I know it's probably time to wrap up your
No, I'll tell you what,
podcast,
let's do some sample clearance stuff, because with your genre specifically, sample use comes up, and it's every genre, to be honest, but let's jump into it just for a second. So when it comes to sample clearance, what have you done previously? What do you know? And we'll go from there.
Okay, so as far as sample clearance, I went as far as contacting a sample clearance company that has had experience with major artists since the 90s,
Okay.
But I just want to do things the right way, even though it's going to be expensive as hell. It was, I probably shouldn't be saying like quoting the price of this company, but it was over $1,000 just to begin the process, so obviously no guarantee whether the sample gets cleared or not. So that's kind of why I wanted to get into the nuances of as far as how that works, how every different company works. I know, the company that I use the samples from might end up asking for like $300,000, $500,000. I don't know, so I just want to see someone who has experience with that kind of stuff on the legal side, not just the sample clearance side, but you got the whole like lawyer package, right? So wanted to get your expertise on that. I know that I've been told by people in like studios and stuff like that, that I think is probably, I know it's wrong. I not probably, but they're like, yeah, well, if you can't recognize, if you chopped it up and tweaked it so much that you can't recognize it, then you can get away with it. But I don't want to risk it, you know. And I know that there's like audio like mechanisms and
Reverse
systems now.
engineering.
Yeah, there's like systems, like electronic automated systems that just it's not no longer the human ear, you know. It's just like it just detects the waveform, the transient or whatever, and then you're screwed, you know. So just wanted to make sure, as far as your advice on that, you know, it's most likely going to be clear the sample, don't risk it, you know. So
Yeah, right. No, and I have artists that I represent who are even bigger named artists, and because it's just so popular, they might decide to do it anyway. But my job as the attorney is just to say, look, maybe nothing will ever happen. However, if it does, again, we go back to copyright law. It's a copyright infringement if you take someone else's sample, so meaning a piece of their instrumental, their vocal, the bass loop, whatever. If you use it without authorization, it's automatically a copyright infringement. And then, of course, they have to bring a claim. But the reality is there are what's called statutory damages, right? It's like speeding. If you were speeding, doesn't matter what your justification was, doesn't matter what your explanation is, you can still be found liable for up to $150,000 per infringement. So, my job is just to say, look, that's the reality. I got to tell you, let's try to clear this. Let's try to do the proper way. And even as an artist myself, I had a sample I was trying to put in one of my songs and we couldn't get it cleared. Now, this was literally just we couldn't get a hold of the applicable publisher to even just get a response, which is sometimes what happens. And other times there's just a financial difficulty because you get an answer and they're like, cool, I'll sample that for $500,000. And so sometimes you just have to make a decision creatively to take something out to protect yourself. So to answer your question, yes, my advice is always going to be make sure you go the legal proper channels, which is you get a license. And so even if it's 1 second, and that's another big question that comes up, Crystal, can I use the sample? If it's just a couple of seconds, is it a big deal? And it doesn't matter. We've had cases that were just a few seconds of something like a guitar riff that was used. And guess what, man? They got smacked across court, millions of dollars in damages and attorney's fees.
Because that's one way. Oh no, go ahead. Sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
No, you're good. I just had a little comment to add to that, but go. I like the advice. So
when it comes to these companies that will help you with clearing samples, my initial thought is I just would rather empower you and teach you how to do it. Right? I'm sure there's people who can help you, but it really is a crapshoot. You don't know if you're going to be able to get it cleared. And so if you're going to, if you have $1,000 to spend, I'd rather teach you how to do it. Go spend $1,000 and, push your label, sign some artists, do some marketing. And so I'll walk you through this a little bit. I actually have a video on my YouTube channel, which is one of the platforms that we're live streaming on, but it's Top Music Attorney. And it's all about sampling, how you do it, what's the process. And so I do more of a deep dive, but let's go through it here as well. So the first place, you're familiar with ASCAP. Right? Are you familiar with BMI as well?
Yes.
Okay. So if on both platforms, it's called the repertoire, but you can just do like search ASCAP or search BMI in Google, and it usually will bring up the applicable page. But you can literally, because almost all music that we're trying to clear is registered on one of these platforms, that's all you do. You go and you do a search and you go, all right, I want to clear Lady Gaga's Telephone song, because that's definitely something you'd want to do. And you go, I want to use like, a vocal or something. You go and you do a search on either of those platforms to figure out where it's registered. And then the brilliant thing is that all the information that you need to get in touch with the publishers, which is how you actually get the license, is right there. There's a phone number, there's usually a physical address, there's usually an email, and it's really that simple. And so, I tell clients when they call me up and they go, Crystal, I want you to try to get this stuff clear for me. I'm like, I'm happy to do it. But I don't know that you should be paying, a lawyer's fee in order for me to send a few emails. And so I'm just always trying to empower my musicians and artists and record label owners to just do this themselves. Send some emails, sometimes send follow-up emails, make a phone call. And most of the time, because you're offering basically money, they'll answer. And you'll at least get the answer yourself. And you won't have to pay that $1,000 for someone else to just send an email for you.
Makes sense, yeah.
Yeah, and then, also keep in mind that a lot of these license agreements for samples are negotiated per use. So what I mean is, for example, some of our filmmakers might want to use a song or to sample in one of their films. And so sometimes we'll have to reach out and they'll be like, okay, cool, you can pay this fee, we'll let you use it for your trailer, and then you're going to pay this other fee to use it in the actual film, and then you're going to pay this other fee to have it in a film festival. And so that's just something that you have to, just be aware of, that the licensing fees are sometimes a little high when you're going for big names, obviously, right?
Yeah, and this is yeah, no, it's a huge name too, the one I'm going after. So it's like it's gonna be a steep price. I'm already expecting, man, but it's cool.
Well, and sometimes it's the long play. Sometimes it's what else can I do? And sometimes you can't get in touch if it's like an old school, legacy act. Maybe they don't have as much buzz anymore, right? So that's another thing we can like kind of stroke their egos and try to go directly to them. And sometimes we get licensing fees that way, and we let them hear the song. This is what it's going to be, and sometimes just the answer is no. And you have to make that decision as a business owner, as an artist yourself, and just to be like, is the risk worth the creative value of me taking the sample? And I'm gonna always say no, but you have to make that decision for yourself.
Sure, no doubt. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Yeah, you got it. Well, guys, I'm gonna get out of here. Eric, thank you very much for joining us. And I'll just kind of remind you one more time, including you, Eric, we're gonna be releasing this course tomorrow. It's totally free. It's like this video course that you're going to go through. You're going to learn all about contracts because even, like Eric noted, sometimes we have verbal agreements and we forget to put it in writing and it just isn't part of our process, or even worse. Sometimes the other person on the other side doesn't want to do the deal if there's actually a contract because they're intimidated by contracts. So I go through a lot of like my best kept secrets when it comes to contracts and negotiating, and we'll be posting all that up tomorrow. So make sure you check back. It's Redhead Attorney on all social media platforms. If you want to follow some of the stuff that I'm doing as far as my music, you can follow on Miss KRYSTLE Live. All right. Well, we're going to get out of here. Thanks for joining us on another episode. If you're watching on YouTube, be sure to hit that subscribe button so you get notified when our weekly videos go up. I'm Miss KRYSTLE. I'll see you on the next one. Bye.